Yes guys, welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix YouTube video. My name is FPL Nacho and in today's video we are looking at the top transfers going into Game Week 2. With concerns with the likes of Nkunku and Quansah, we're going to be looking at the best replacements as well as just generally the best players to buy. So as always, if you're new around here, make sure you do smash the subscribe button and of course drop a like on the video if you are looking forward to it. And without further ado, let's get into today's video. So first up, I think it is really important here to take a look at this Liverpool attack. Coming off the back of a 2-0 victory against Ipswich, it wasn't all plain sailing in the first half, but Arne Slot made the necessary changes in the game to get them over the line. And that definitely was influenced with Jota, Diaz and Mo Salah. A combined XG of the three of over 2, which is really promising. And it makes us start to think, do we need two of these attackers, not just the one? Because I do feel like a lot of people that are watching this right now probably already have one of Jota, Diaz or Mo Salah. And when we look at the underlying numbers here, we need to first and foremost say that it's only one game week worth of information. So we can't draw up any conclusions right now and say to ourselves, this particular player is the best player for our teams. Especially with the information that we're looking at right now. Because Diaz was the one that came away with the game with a blank. But his underlying numbers were actually the best. 0.91 expected goal is fantastic. Comparing that to Diogo Jota's 0.81 and Mo Salah's 0.68. Let's be real. All three of these are brilliant underlying numbers. But you can see how Luis Diaz owners are really unlucky in game week 1. And in terms of expected assists, Luis Diaz leading the way as well. 0.54 compared to Mo Salah's 0.45. Nothing for Diogo Jota, but I've spoken about this in previous videos. When I'm buying the number 9 in a team, I don't really care about his expected assists. It's all about, is he getting the big chances? Is he the one everything is funneling through? And you can see here, Jota's underlying numbers for expected goals was decent. So no problems there with Jota. But Diaz owners, you are incredibly unlucky. And the shot volume for all three, also great. 4 for Salah, 3 apiece for Diaz and Diogo Jota. So what we can conclude right now and what we've seen so far is that all three of these are fantastic FPL options. All of them are at some point going to be a slight risk of minutes. I think in particular Jota and Luis Diaz, because we also have Gakpo and Darwin Núñez waiting in the wings. I think Mo Salah's space in his team is probably a bit more secure, as it always is under Jurgen Klopp's tenure. I think the same will apply to Arne Slot. It is the most experienced forward, and I do expect him just to play the majority of minutes. But right now, with the fixtures coming up, Brentford at home, Man United away, Nottingham Forest at home, Bournemouth at home, I feel like doubling up on the Liverpool attack is actually a viable strategy for your FPL teams, and you can even do it as quickly as this game week. So if you have Mo Salah right now, and you're in a position where maybe you have Nkunku, a bit of money in the bank, and you think to yourself, I'm done with Nkunku, then maybe going to someone like a Jota or Diaz is the route to go for. Even though Diaz had the better numbers, I still personally would lead towards Diogo Jota. I just prefer him as a finisher, and I do think that even though he will have worse numbers at times, I still expect him to actually have the output, and that is the most important thing. Underlying numbers are great and they are an actual predictor of the future, but I also take into account finishing, and Diogo Jota just has that clinical nature about him that maybe Luis Diaz doesn't have. So I think doubling up on the attack is absolutely viable for your FPL teams. In terms of FPL points expected, you can see Mo Salah led the way, Diaz followed by Diogo Jota. So to conclude, I think right now, whichever Liverpool asset you have, you stick. If you have Diaz and he blank, do not worry about it. It was still a fantastic game for him. The big question is, do you double up? If you have the luxury to do so, I would. But if you're in a position right now where your team looks great, I wouldn't be rushing to get another Liverpool attacker in. Keep the one you have, reassess, and then when we have our free transfers available or the wild card, we really then, especially in game week 4, need to consider a double up on these Liverpool midfielders. So I briefly mentioned about Nkunku in the situation that we have right now with him. So just to give people an update with Nkunku, came off before the 60th minute in game week 1 against Man City. Underlying numbers were not fantastic. And with Chelsea right now recruiting more and more players as each day passes, we have João Felix now bought by Chelsea. We got Pedro Neto signed. There are slight concerns about Nkunku's game time in the future for game week 2, game week 3 and onwards. And I do understand the problem that managers are currently having right now with that. I think with Nkunku in pre-season, he was such an important player for Chelsea, getting significant minutes. But with Chelsea's squad changing each and every day, there are concerns that he might be a 60-minute man. I don't think his starts are going to be hindered massively. I think he's not going to maintain himself as a 90-minute man. Now, I have to put out there and say, Chelsea have a fixture this Thursday in the Conference League, leg 1 of 2. So we need to make sure we don't make any transfers right now for Nkunku, because if he's benched in that game, I think that's a positive that he will play in game week 2. And to be honest with you, if that is the case, do not be selling Nkunku going into game week 2. However, if we do get in a position where Nkunku looks like he could be a rotation risk going into the weekend, then I do think we need to at least consider some alternatives for our teams. And at the same price, I think these 3 are viable options. Doku at Man City, Brighton's Mitoma, and Man United's Garnacho. So of course, very, very differing minutes for all 3 of these assets here. Doku playing the predominant of the game in game week 1. Mitoma similar. Garnacho only playing 25 minutes in game week 1. So we do need to account for that. In terms of XG, Mitoma with a massive 1.21. However, his goal did come from a very high XG chance. So he did have other things in the game. His shot volume at 4 was great, but his goal that he scored was a very high XG chance in itself. So that has dominated the numbers quite a bit. Garnacho 0.5 XG, he obviously missed that huge chance, but in 25 minutes played, really promising numbers. And of course, Doku 0.13 XG in that game. In terms of FPL points, Mitoma the real winner here, but my eyes are on Garnacho right now because we knew his preseason was a little bit hit and miss with minutes. He was going to be building up his fitness in the early stages of the season, but I think Garnacho is so important to this Man United team, and I really don't see him as a rotating squad player. I think we're looking at Ten Hag viewing Garnacho as a starter in this Man United team, and I think it's only a matter of time until he either displaces Rashford off the left or he comes in full-time as the right winger, taking minutes away from Amad Diallo. And right now, if I was looking at a long-term option for my team, I would be quite inclined to go for someone like a Garnacho at 6.5 million. Brighton away, followed by Liverpool at home, which I don't think is a terrible fixture for attackers. Then Southampton away, followed by Palace away. I get it. I think managers probably want to see maybe a little bit more from Garnacho from a minutes perspective before investing in him, but he needs to be on your radar. Doku, on the other hand, a player that I cannot get behind investing long term. However, if you're maybe looking at a wildcard in game week 4 and you are completely committed to that strategy, then I do think Doku for the next 2 is actually an okay move. Ipswich at home in game week 2, fantastic fixture. And we know Doku is one of those players that does have a really high ceiling where he can deliver in those games with some monster hauls. Then West Ham away. After that, fixtures start to skew a little bit, and also I think the game time of Doku becomes so unpredictable. So I think Doku for 1 game week is great. Finally, Mitoma. Now, Mitoma I think has gone massively under the radar, and I really do think he needs to be a consideration for our teams. The only concern that I do have about Mitoma is that Minter at 5.5 million is actually amazing FPL value. And should we go for Mitoma when we get Minter at $1 million less? Now, I do think Mitoma's minutes are going to be the best of all Brighton assets. He's much more of the senior in that attack right now. And I do think that he is just irreplaceable on that left-hand side as opposed to someone like a Minter who can come off for an Adingra. So I think Mitoma isn't a buy right now. Maybe consideration around game week 4 with those brilliant 2 fixtures against Ipswich and Nottingham Forest. So to conclude, in terms of the predicted points for the next 5, Mitoma does lead the way. And I do think that kind of plays into the narrative of maybe avoiding the next 2 because that's where his predicted points are really low, and then buying him in game week 4. Garnacho's at 16.1 is actually my preference over both of these at the time of recording. But to be honest, with Nkunku, unless he plays a lot of minutes on Thursday, I think you hold on to him for at least 1 more game week, and then we can reassess when the fixtures get better for these players and maybe a consideration for game week 3 or 4 in our FPL teams. So last up of the replacements, I need to talk about these 4.5 million defenders who are potential alternatives for Jarrod Quansah. Now, The big problem right now, of course, is that Jarrod Quansah's price fell last night to 4.4 million. So I really do hope that you did monitor the price. As always, make sure you do check out fantasyfootballfix.com. Link is in the bio for the price change predictor. Our algorithm predicts when the prices are going to change. Really important to have that in these opening stages. So you check it out, download it on the app, or check it out on the website, link in the bio. But of course, 4.4 million for Quansah is a major concern because now you can only go down to a 4 million if you don't have money in the bank. But let's say you have money in the bank, fingers crossed. These are the three considerations that we can have for our teams. Rico Lewis, Robinson at Fulham, and Man United's Mazraoui. So Lewis in particular is the one that's catching a lot of people's attention right now. Brilliant game against Chelsea, 12 final third passes, which is brilliant against Chelsea. Bonus baseline, not as good as I thought at 22, but still not too bad at all. And in terms of Rico Lewis, I think we all know he's a phenomenal option. If we can get a Man City defender at 4.5 million, everybody would own him. The problem with it is, can we guarantee those minutes? And I think that's always the concern with Rico Lewis, especially when we know Kyle Walker waiting in the wings, an experienced pro that Pep does lean on at times. But I think eventually Walker's time is going to come to an end. And we know Pep tries to always evolve this Man City team. And maybe it is time for him to actually evolve that right back role and bring in Rico Lewis, who's been knocking on the door for the last 12 months or so. So firstly, I want to say, predicted points wise, Rico Lewis is actually leading the way at 20.7. But I would say also his minutes are the most unpredictable of all the players. I think it comes down to this. If you're looking at an early wildcard, I really think taking the punt on Rico Lewis is worth it. At home against Ipswich, followed by West Ham and then Brentford at home. Knowing that if he eventually loses his place, you can wildcard and you already had that planned. If you're maybe looking at a wildcard around game week 8, then I think to myself, maybe Lewis is a bit too much of a risk. Because if you bring him in, plays game week 2 and then is benched for game week 3 onwards, then you have really brought in a player that is just as much of a concern as Jarrod Quansah. But I do think he is a fantastic option. Now, Robinson for me is the complete package, has the fixtures, underlying numbers last season were good, not incredible, but I think he is an attacking outfield player. And importantly, we know that he is going to have guaranteed game time in that Fulham team. So great fixtures, decent attacking output, and guaranteed minutes for him. I think he's a fantastic alternative to Jarrod Quansah in your teams. And for the foreseeable future, Leicester at home, Ipswich away, West Ham at home. This is a player that can come straight into your teams and he can feature week in, week out. So I love Robinson, probably my number one pick of all the replacements there. Lastly, Mazraoui. Now, I've brought him in because I don't actually love the pick, but he is one of the most bought players going into game week 2. And personally, I don't see it right now. Brighton away, not an ideal fixture at all. Followed by Liverpool at home. Again, quite a tricky fixture for Mazraoui from a clean sheet perspective. And that's the first thing you want to look at. Can my defender deliver clean sheets? Then can he deliver output? And I didn't see enough from Mazraoui to think that this guy is going to be getting tons of assists, maybe the Trent 2.0. I don't really see that right now. So even though the numbers are good, the baseline BAPS is good, final third passes at 10, personally, I prefer Lewis as a short-term punt or Robinson as a long-term punt. Mazraoui would actually be my third pick on this list. But let me know your thoughts in the comments section. So finally, I thought it would be really important to take a look at the predicted points for game week 2 because we need to talk about captaincy because there seems like there's only one man right now and that is going to be Erling Haaland at 10.1 predicted points, which is absolutely monstrous. And I think the big conversation point also is, do we triple captain Erling Haaland? Well, 10.1 predicted points is probably some of the highest you are going to see in a single game week. And I think that's the big thing right now. If you're a manager that is all about double game weeks, and it's worth noting, this season will be the least double game weeks we have ever had because of the way that they've changed the cup structures. Now, of course, freak things can happen. We've seen it in the last few years, which will instigate some double game weeks. But right now, based on what we know, single game weeks might actually be a viable move for your triple captain. And I think Ipswich at home probably is one of the best that you can go for. So I know it feels a bit scary doing it in game week 2, but I think you do actually have a little bit of a thought about whether you triple captain Haaland. For me, I think it's the best game week to do it in a single game week. It's just more about whether you want to save that chip later on in the season. I probably won't do it, but I think anybody who does it, rightly so, has an argument to do so. So Haaland, by far and away the best captaincy. Outside of that, De Bruyne at 7.6 predicted points, then Mo Salah at 6.9. Very difficult for managers that don't have Haaland to say to themselves, Salah is a better captaincy, but let's be real. Brentford at home is not a bad fixture at all. And would I be shocked if Mo Salah outscores Haaland? I wouldn't be personally. So I think Mo Salah is absolutely fine as an alternative captain for Erling Haaland. Outside of that, Phil Foden at 6.5, a player that I need to see minutes before actually considering in our teams. Then Eze, really unlucky not to get any returns. But with Man City now going for Gundogan in the transfer market, I think Eze is pretty safe in that Crystal Palace team going forward and now becomes a brilliant option for your FPL teams. Followed by Ederson, Isak, Trent, Son and Saka. So to conclude the predicted points, personally, Haaland, by far and away the best captaincy and a triple captain consideration, but you shouldn't be scared going for Mo Salah as an alternative. And let me know in the comments if you're planning on going for a triple captain Haaland. So that is going to wrap up today's top transfers going into game week 2. If you have any questions, please do put them in the comment section. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and of course, smash the subscribe button. And I will see you in the next video. Take care. Cheers.